Oh dear. Uh, exactly. Yes. Some are better, but they're all good. Oh dear. Well, this is always the worst time to teach, right after a meal. I would rather do anything than teach the hour after lunch. And any teacher will tell you that's absolutely true. It's true. Well, I think we have most everybody back. And in this session, we're going to be talking about what is absolutely the single most important thing we could talk about when it comes to the science of creation versus evolution. May I ask a question? You know I do like a response. If, and I did say if, the Earth and the universe are old, would that make evolution true? Well, it wouldn't make it true. It said, well, maybe there's been enough time, but it wouldn't make it true, correct? But if the Earth and the universe are young, no theory of evolution could possibly be true. Is that correct? The evolutionist lives and dies by 8 words. In spite of anything and everything you can show an evolutionist that evolution is not true, they will automatically respond by saying, give me enough time and anything can happen. Those are the 8 words by which an evolutionist lives and dies. And it doesn't matter what you can show them that evolution is not true. They will respond by saying, yeah, but give me enough time and anything could happen. So the question is, has there ever been enough time? Now, with that in mind, of course, we're going to show you that there has never been enough time. But we do have 2 DVDs. We've got several books at the book table dealing with this issue of time, of rocks. One of them is Rocks Aren't Clocks, you know. But I'd like you to think about this for just a moment. Is there anything about a rock that will tell you how old it is? Is there anything about the size, feel, shape, smell, taste, weight, specific gravity, density, chemical composition? Is there anything about a rock that will tell you how old it is? Of course, absolutely no. There is nothing about a rock that will tell you how old it is. I can go outside right now, pick up any rock I want to. I can claim any age I want to for it. You may disagree with me, but you cannot scientifically prove that I'm wrong. Did you hear that? I can claim any age I want. You may disagree, but you can't scientifically prove I'm wrong. Think with me. When we find rocks, do they come with little white strings, little white tags attached saying, I'm 10 million years old, and signed by a scientist who was there at the time? Hello? No? I was once asked to write an article for a Christian magazine. When you're asked to write an article, sometimes they say, here's the title, write the article. Sometimes they say, pick your own title, write your own article, you know. In this particular occasion, I was given the title of the article. The title of the article was, How Do You Date a Rock? My first response was, first you have to ask her. Well, some of you got it. But let's think about it. There's nothing about a rock that will tell you how old it is. Now, here is a rock that we found not too long ago. Now, when we found that rock, did it come with a little white string, little white tag attached saying how old it is? No. Then how do you know how old it is? Can we figure out a way or can we not? You see, what we're looking at now is, are the Earth and the universe really billions of years old as evolutionists claim, or are the Earth and the universe really young? Now, I know what's going to happen if you tell somebody that you believe in an old Earth, because I have to deal with it all the time. When you say, no, I believe in a young Earth, I believe in a young universe. Well, we're looking at, is the Earth really old as evolutionists claim? Did it all start with a Big Bang? Now, you will remember yesterday we talked about this concept of the Big Bang. Can an explosion construct a building, correct? The whole idea of a Big Bang is irrational, illogical, unreasonable, and unscientific, correct? As I mentioned, even evolutionists have proved it's not true. But we're looking at, did it all start with a Big Bang, and was that Big Bang 13.82 billion years ago? You see, today, evolutionists say that the universe is 13.82 billion years old. I emphasize the 2 for a very good reason. You see, 2 years ago, they said it was 13.7. And then they said, oh, we made a mistake, just like every other time they've made a claim for the age of the universe. And they say, oh, no, we were wrong 2 years ago. It's 13.82 billion years old. Now, why did they put the little 2 on the end of it? It's to make you believe they actually measured it. Hello? But we're looking at, is it that old, or can you really trust the Bible about a recent creation of the entire universe only 6,000 years ago? That's what we are looking at. And when you say to somebody, I believe the earth and the universe are young, the knee-jerk reaction is going to be, they're going to say, but wait. But wait, you can't possibly believe that it's young. And then they're going to do this. They're going to say, doesn't it have to be old because? Now, this is nobody you know. Just wanted to make sure you all knew that, okay? But they're going to say, doesn't it have to be old, and doesn't have to be old because. Now, depending upon the person you're talking to, depending upon their level of education, their experience, they're going to give you a list of reasons why they believe it's old, correct? Now, their list may have some of the things I'm going to say, or others. It may be shorter or longer, but they're going to say things like this. Doesn't it have to be old because? Doesn't it take millions and billions of years for rocks to form? Well, first of all, you saw a stone cowboy formed in 30 years. Is that correct? Well, anyway, what about diamonds and other gemstones to form? Doesn't that take a long time? Or what about stalactites and stalagmites? Doesn't that take a long time? They'll say, what about the polar ice caps? Aren't the polar ice caps hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years old? Or what about thousands of feet of sedimentary rock layers to be deposited? Well, after the dinosaur presentation, I bet you're suspicious about that, at least. Is that right? Yeah. Then they're going to say, doesn't it take millions of years for deep canyons to be cut into rock layers? We have a presentation on Mount St. Helens. It's a relatively small volcano in Washington State. It erupted on Sunday morning, May the 18th of 1980 at 8:32:17 in the morning. It was just a little tiny volcano, but the explosion was equal to a 24 megaton atomic bomb. But it was just a little volcano. And then, because of that eruption in 1980, there was an earthen dam that formed, and a lake was formed behind it. And there was an earthquake on March the 19th of 1982, and that dam broke. And all that water from that lake poured through the breach in the dam and cut a canyon 1/40th the size of the Grand Canyon in Arizona in one day. It doesn't take a long time to cut a canyon through hard, deep rock. They're also going to say, doesn't it take millions of years for dinosaur fossils to form? Now, when I was being taught evolution, that's what they taught me. I'm sure that's what they taught you. They're also going to say the same thing. What about coal to form? Evolutionists say coal formed 300 to 360 million supposed years ago during what's called the Carboniferous period, also referred to as the Pennsylvanian and the Mississippian period of time. We're going to take a look at, does it take a long time for coal to form? Also, of course, fossilized wood, the fossilized forests around the world, the petrified forests. They say, oh, that takes millions of years, correct? But it doesn't. At Mount St. Helens, I just mentioned it because we show in that DVD. Now, that was 38 years ago. In less than a few years, we saw fossilization and coalification of wood at Mount St. Helens. It doesn't take millions of years. But regardless of who you're talking to, regardless of how long the list may be, regardless of whether it has these arguments or others on their list, one argument they will almost every one of them use is this. Doesn't it take millions and billions of years for light to reach us from distant stars and distant galaxies? They think that is a killer. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't take millions or billions of years. We'll probably end with that particular part of the presentation. I will tell you that the DVD with this afternoon's material has more arguments, but I'm going to probably have to stop there for time. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I say it all has to be young, and I say it has to be young because. Now, ladies, are you listening? Ladies, are you listening?
Yes.
I'm here to help you. Are you listening? Right?
Yes.
How many of you ladies like the bling? I'll repeat that. How many of you ladies like the bling? The bling. If you don't know, that's the new buzzword for gemstones. Sparkly things, diamonds, hello? Yeah, that's the new buzzword for diamonds and pretty stones. It's called the bling. Now, how many of you are interested in the bling? Oh, I see. Yes, she is. I kind of thought so, actually. Well, let's start taking a little look. Now, this is a natural piece of opal from Australia. I think you'll agree that's a nice rock. Is that right? Yeah, that's a nice rock. Now, this is a natural piece of opal mined by hand in Australia. This is not a man-made opal. That is a man-grown opal. Let me explain. This opal was grown in that jar right there. Hello? Do I start to have your attention? You know, usually, ladies, the first question I hear is, what's the formula? Well, we're taking, like, does it take millions of years for gemstones like opals or diamonds to form? And what about gold? You hear a lot about gold, don't you, these days? Radio, TV, newspapers, right? The only reason the price is so high is because they do all that advertising to convince you to buy it. Hello? Well, think about it. But let's take a little look. This is a different opal from Australia. This is a natural opal mined by hand in Australia. This is not a man-made opal. This is a man-grown opal. You cannot tell the difference between the two. But this man-grown opal was grown in that jar right there. You can actually see it growing in that lens right there, okay? It only took 3 months. So tell me, does it take millions of years to get an opal? Well, okay, your answer was correct, but let me ask you, every time I ask that question in this session, the correct response is not a chance, okay? So does it take millions of years to get an opal? Not a chance. Thank you. See, now you're getting the idea. Okay, that's good. That's good. But apparently, you're not all that interested in opals. Well, that wasn't a question. It was an observation. Apparently, ladies, you're not that interested in opals. Although, do any of you have opal jewelry? Anybody here, ladies? You do have. Very good. So, guys, I hope you were listening. Did you hear that? Only one lady has opal jewelry. Remember, Christmas is coming. Hello? Valentine's Day, birthdays, anniversaries, hello? See, ladies, I really am trying to help you here. But if you're, I beg your pardon, that was a true statement. I really am trying to help them. Now, apparently, though, you really are not that interested in opals. So maybe you would be pretty interested in another rock. How about this rock? Oh, come on, ladies. That's a nice rock. That's the Hope Diamond at the Smithsonian. That's the world's largest blue diamond. Hello. That is a nice rock. Agreed? Now, evolutionists will tell you that diamonds form deep inside the earth at very high temperatures, very high pressures, that they slowly come to the surface where we find them. However, they say it takes millions of years, but if you stop and think about it, you know it doesn't take millions and millions of years to get a diamond. Because you already know that since 1953, we've been able to make man-made diamonds. Now, these are not gem quality diamonds, they're industrial grade diamonds, but they are real diamonds. And we've been able to make them since 1953, right? So for 55 years, we've been able to make diamonds. Again, they're not gem quality, they're industrial grade. When you see people cutting through cement, cutting through asphalt and so forth, they use stones covered with man-made diamonds. Well, that's 1953. But how many of you know that in the year 2003, we started making pure gem quality diamonds in only a matter of minutes? Please notice I do give the citations on all this material. This comes from Nature magazine, which is the single highest scientific journal in the world for evolutionists. If you're an evolutionist and you get your article published in Nature, you have made the A list, hello? And this comes from the highest source of evolutionists. But in 2003, we found out how to make pure gem quality diamonds in only a matter of minutes. The problem was it took incredibly high temperatures and very high pressures. But of course, if you know anything about a scientist, you know that once we learn how to do something, the next two questions are, how do you do it cheaper, faster, or both, correct? The very next year, 2004, we started making gem quality diamonds in only 12 hours. But at much lower temperatures and much lower pressures. This comes from New Scientist, which is a totally evolutionary publication. It is deeply evolutionist. Well, that was 2004. But of course, if you know anything about a scientist, you know that once we learn how to do something, the next two questions are, how do you do it cheaper, faster, or both, correct? In the year 2006, we started making pure gem quality diamonds up to 10 carats in size in only 1 day. Today, you can go into a jewelry shop in Syracuse. I'm not advertising here, but I'm just saying you can. And you can buy a diamond, either a man-made diamond or a natural diamond of equal quality. And men, are you listening? Men, are you listening? I assure you the ladies will be. The diamond will be 15 to 15% cheaper if it's man-made. Hello? See, ladies, I really am here to help you. But men, I'm not finished yet, because now you really want to pay attention to this. That is interesting information. I hope you would agree. But in the year 2015, we found out you can make small gem quality diamonds without any pressure at all, using nothing more to heat the material than a common oxyacetylene torch, and form diamonds in only 8 hours. Oxyacetylene torches are what is used in an automobile body shop. Hello, guys? Just suggesting. So does it take a long time to get a diamond? Now, see, you did forget. Remember, the correct answer was? Not a chance. Well, let's take a little look at gold while we're at it. Now, you hear a lot about gold these days, is that correct? Now, again, evolutionists will tell you it takes millions and millions of years to get gold deposits in nature. Now, on the DVD of the material I'm sharing with you this afternoon, I have an item where I show it doesn't take a long time. As a matter of fact, on the DVD, I show, according to evolutionary geologists, working at the massive gold deposit at Papua New Guinea, it's called Lahore Gold Mine, that the entire massive gold deposit could have been produced in nature in as little as 5 hours. That's research going back to the 1980s, when he actually saw gold being deposited on metal coming from hot water. The hot water coming right out of the ground. However, tonight, or this afternoon, shall we say, I want to show you something that's a latest piece of information I can give you to show that gold actually forms very rapidly. Before I do, though, I would like to ask all of you a question. Now, I've said this before. There is no such thing as a trick question in any of my presentations, right? I don't ask trick questions. How many of you want to be worth $1 billion tomorrow? It's not a trick question. How many of you would like to be worth $1 billion tomorrow? Okay, we have a few people that are waiting for the lottery. Okay. They didn't raise their hand. But I'm absolutely serious. I don't ask trick questions. I am going to tell you how to do it. And again, I'm absolutely serious. I want you to think about this. You raise a child or a grandchild that can figure out how to get the gold out of seawater, and you will be worth $1 billion tomorrow, guaranteed. Hello? There's enough gold dissolved in the ocean's waters to make every one of you worth $1 billion tomorrow. The problem is nobody has ever figured out how to get it out. Hello? But you raise a child or a grandchild that can figure out how to do it, and you will be super rich. Hello? Now, with that in mind, gold is dissolved in water at the atomic level, and that doesn't include just the water in the oceans, it includes the water in the ground. Now, we're talking about going deep down. We're talking about going down where earthquakes occur, because we have recently found out through scientific research, gold deposits are actually made instantaneously. It only takes a few tenths of a second for a gold deposit to form in the ground. What happens is there's an earthquake, and when that happens, snap, land moves against land. And when that happens, there's a tremendous pressure change. And when that happens, the water evaporates and gold is deposited. It takes less than a second. Hello? So does it take a long time for gold to form in the ground? Not a chance. Well, let's go on. What about stalactites and stalagmites? Now, of course, in New York State, there are some caves. There's caves in Pennsylvania. Maybe you've been to caves in Virginia, like Luray, or Carlsbad, New Mexico, or Mammoth, Kentucky, whatever. But how many of you have gone to caves that have stalactites and stalagmites? Come on, if you've been underground, be proud. How many of you have been underground here? Only 5 adventurous people, and I make 6. Hello. Well, for the 6 of you that have, I'm going to ask you just a general question for everybody, right? When you were taken to those limestone caves where they have stalactites and stalagmites, didn't they tell you 2 things? Okay? Didn't they walk you up to the entrance of the cave and the guide said, you know, it takes 10, 20 million years to get a cave like this? No, the correct response there was, ooh. So, are you ready? The guide walks you up to the entrance of the cave. He says, you know, it takes 10, 20 million years to get a cave like this. Ooh. And the second thing they tell you is, don't touch that. It'll take 1,000 years to grow back. You should have seen the expression on his face. I think he's heard it before. But let's think, does it take 10, 20 million years to get a limestone cave? Now, I have an hour-long presentation just showing caves from all over the world, proving it doesn't. But I just want to show you 2 this afternoon. First one, we're looking at, do stalactites and stalagmites grow slowly? This is a photograph of native Indian pottery in the Yucatan. This is Mayan Indian pottery. The Yucatan is full of limestone caves. You can see stalactites and stalagmites in here behind, but this is native Indian pottery left in the cave. We know it was left approximately 1,300 years ago. That's not that difficult to figure out. But notice that on top of this man-made pottery, this is a stalagmite. Is that correct? And it only took 1,300 years to form. Is that correct? Or less. Oh, limestone caves. The Yucatan is full of these limestone caves. That's where you find stalactites and stalagmites, because limestone coming out of the water is what forms the columns. Well, that's one picture. This picture comes from Australia. Now, this is a man-made cave, although technically it's a tunnel. It was dug into a basaltic hill in Australia in 1857. The photograph you see here was taken in 1997. Here you see beautiful flowstones, curtain stalactites up here, is that correct? And all of those formations formed in only 140 years. Right. So tell me, does it take millions and millions of years to get a limestone cave? Not a chance. And let's talk about, well, the polar ice caps. Now, in Antarctica, there's a polar ice cap. It's massive. There's so much ice in the Antarctic, the weight of the ice actually pushes the continent down. But there's an ice cap on Greenland, too. Now, remember, there is no ice cap in the Arctic. The Arctic is just ice floating on top of water. But in Greenland and in Antarctica, we do have a polar ice cap. Now, in Antarctica, Russian scientists at the Vostok Hole say they have found 400,000 layers in the ice as they drilled a core down through. The French and Italians at what's called Dome Sea have drilled down through the Antarctic ice and say they have found 800,000 layers. Now, I want you to think with me. So they drill down through the ice. And as they go down, you see layers in the ice. Now, I agree the layers are there, okay? The layers are there. Until you get about halfway down. When you get halfway down, the pressure of the ice above squeezes those lines out, and you can't see them. After that, it's just extrapolation. Are you with me? So they didn't really count 800,000. They just claim it, okay? But think with me for a minute. I mean, you've gone into the kitchen and you've opened up the refrigerator freezer door and you've seen ice cubes melting together in the freezer. Is that correct? Because ice sublimes. Ice flows even in a frozen state, correct? Now, with that in mind, let's take a little look. Because evolutionists tell you, they claim that all those little lines in the ice, which are there in the upper portions, but they claim every one of those lines is a year. That the little lines are just like tree rings. You know, you cut through the tree and you count the rings and you can tell how long it's been growing, right? And they say all these little lines are years, just like tree rings, and therefore the ice is 400,000 or 800,000 years old. Now, when I was an evolutionist, I used to believe that, but I don't believe it anymore. And I'd like to show you why. So I'm going to ask all of you in this room, in your mind, come back with me to World War II, to 1942. Just in your mind, can you do that? So just come back to 1942 with me. In 1942, 2 Boeing B-17 Liberator bombers, 6 Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighters took off from the United States to go to England to be a part of the war effort. Now, these planes cannot possibly fly directly to England. They don't have the fuel capacity. So if you cannot fly directly across the Atlantic, what must you do? You have to fly around the Atlantic. How do you fly around the Atlantic? It's really quite simple. You fly to Bangor, Maine, you fuel up. You go to Newfoundland, you fuel up. You go to the southwest corner of Greenland, you fuel up. You go to Iceland, you fuel up. Eventually you'll work your way to England. These 8 planes got to Greenland. They fueled up. They flew across the polar ice cap of Greenland, out over the water, heading to Iceland. But they ran into a white-out blizzard. How many of you are familiar with a white-out blizzard? Come on, it's snowing so hard you can't see the front end of the car, right? Now, they could not land in Iceland because they couldn't find it. Hello? So they've got 2 choices. They can either land in the water and die in 5 minutes, like Titanic, or they can land on a glacier in Greenland. Well, I guess you know which one they did, right? So the first plane tries to land on the ice with the wheels down, but when it hits the ice, the plane flips over. Now, any pilot will tell you that's a bad landing. Yeah, hello? So the other 7 planes simply landed with their wheels up. They simply belly landed on the ice. It took 9 days for the crews to be rescued. No one was lost. Everybody was rescued. But the planes were simply left there because they were highly damaged and they were worthless at that point in time. It was much cheaper just to build new planes. So the planes were left there. But in 1988, 46 years later, some men down in the state of Kentucky remembered those planes are up there, and today they are valuable. There's a lot of money in antique military airplanes because there are so few of them. And so they said, well, we're going to go up to Greenland, get those planes, bring them back, make some money. It's just a good venture. Hello? Now, evolutionists tell you that these little lines in the ice equal a year, correct? It has only been 46 years. Now, I need to explain, the planes do not sink into the ice. Where they landed is where they stayed, okay? But would you please tell me, how much ice and snow did they find on top of the planes when they found them? Wait, hang on a second. Now, layers doesn't tell me depth, but you said 400 layers, so how much is that? 5 feet, thank you. Okay, so I have an opening bid of 5 feet from the group over here. And what was your guess? Now, wait a minute. 100 feet and the 100 yards are two totally different things. Wait a minute. What did you say? It's only been 46 years. This is supposed to be a year. So how much thickness should I find on top of the planes? 46 inches. Okay, so we have 46 inches, all right? Huh? 100 inches, okay? One more bid. Anybody else? 100 yards. Everybody, did you know that this brother is into the gift of exaggeration? All of you were very low, except you were a little high. We actually found 250 feet. We found 250 feet of ice and snow on top of the plains after only 46 years. You see, they couldn't find the planes. They knew where they were supposed to be, but they couldn't find them. And they had to get ice-penetrating radar. They found the planes 250 to 270 feet below the surface. They had to come back, get equipment that would not drill, but melt a hole through the ice this big down to the plains. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Lockheed P-38, 250 feet below the surface. They melted the hole down to her, melted out around her to take this picture. Now, of the 8 planes, this one was in such good condition, they disassembled her, brought her up the hole, brought her back to Kentucky, reassembled her, and today she's flying. I'll show you a picture to prove it. But, I want you to think about something. Do the math. Think with me. It only took 46 years for 250 feet of ice and snow to accumulate on top of the plains. That's 5.4 foot per year. At that rate, you could get the 3,000 meters of ice in the Antarctic in only 2,000 years. Hello? The ice caps are not millions of years old. Now, you know that I have, and I always go in the wintertime because I live in Florida and I want to cool off. So I go to the Ukraine in the wintertime, and I go to Russia in the wintertime, obviously. Now, you know, if particularly you've been in the northern part of the Ukraine, that, they plow the snow. Is that correct? Now, I grew up in California. Excuse me? Okay, where they plow it, it's plowed, right? I grew up in the mountains of the Sierras in California. Those are serious mountains, and we plow snow there too. Tell me something. After they plow, After a storm, when you go along the road and look at the side, doesn't it look like that? It does, is that right? Think with me. Compress that, and it looks exactly like the little lines in the polar ice caps. Hello? You know those lines in the polar ice caps? They're there. But I do not believe they represent years. I believe they represent individual storms. Hello? Yes, but how many snowstorms do you get in a winter? Quite a few. How about in Syracuse? This is the snow belt. I lived here through 2 winters. Snows every day. Every day you get fresh snow, but every night you get more dirt, and then you get fresh snow and more dirt and fresh snow. So how many layers would you get in one winter in Syracuse? Certainly hundreds, there's no doubt about that. And I said that plane is still in flying condition today. I was in Bangor. I was teaching a few years ago. I didn't know she was going to be there, but it turned out she was making a visit. And when I found out about it, I went over. I have 6 pictures of her. I'd like to just show you one. Think with me for a moment. The plane you saw there today looks like that. Looks pretty good for an old girl, don't you think? Yeah. I think she's absolutely beautiful. Well, let's continue. We're going to look at, does radiometric dating prove that rocks are billions of years old? Now, when I use a word that I think you might not be familiar with, I always want to define that word for you. What does the word radiometric mean? Well, it means this. It is the supposed use of the decay of radioactive materials to supposedly measure the amount of time since an event occurred or a creature lived. So radiometric, the supposed use of the decay of radioactive materials to supposedly determine how long it has been since something lived or an event occurred. With that in mind, for instance, you have all heard of carbon-14. But there are other methods as well. Again, uranium, lead, potassium, argon, rubidium, strontium, there are many other methods like this. However, none of them work. None of them work. All of them start with 6 fatal false assumptions. Carbon-14 has 20 fatal false assumptions. Now, if you start with 6 or 20 fatal false assumptions, how can you possibly get a reliable date? Hello? Thank you. Thank you. You are really making my heart feel warm, I'm telling you right now. We have a DVD showing all 20 problems scientifically with carbon-14. We have a DVD showing why none of them work, but in particular potassium-argon. They all start with 6 fatal false assumptions. Think with me for just a moment. You know that this is true. First of all, the man who invented carbon-14, Dr. Libby, even admitted it didn't work. That's a good sign. But in addition to that, today we can measure the isotopes in a sample today, but we don't know what was there to begin with. If you don't know the starting conditions, but only the ending conditions, you can't possibly calculate a date. Is that correct? Then you have problems because they assume a constant decay rate, but there's no such thing in nature, and we know that decay rates do vary in nature. They are not a continuous constant decay rate. We have contamination. Acid rain will wash lead into or out of a system. Water. Uranium is a salt in nature. It can be washed in and out of a deposit. So you don't know how much uranium, how much lead was there to begin with. All you know is what's there now. Hello? There are many other problems, but they all start with 6 fatal false assumptions. Carbon-14 has 20 scientific problems, plus, if you think biblically, the flood of Noah would drastically change the carbon cycle on Earth, and that would change carbon-14 dates. In addition to which, the atmosphere before the flood, the Earth's magnetic field was 20 times stronger at creation than it is today. There was the extra moisture in the atmosphere. That's day 2 of the week of creation. Well, that came down at the time of the flood in the 40 days and 40 nights of rain. But the extra moisture in the atmosphere before the flood of Noah, the tremendously stronger magnetic field before the flood, would mean that carbon-14 would either not form at all or would form at a much lower rate than today, and that would throw all dates off. There are many flaws with the whole thing. However, may I ask you a question? If, I said if these things did work, if you could use two different methods on the same rock, and if they worked, wouldn't you expect to get approximately the same result? That's logically correct, right? So if I could use two different methods on the same rock, I should get approximately the same result. Now, we're not asking for perfection here. I don't mean that. But what would you say? If it was within 5% of the same value, you would say maybe they appear to work? Okay, that's 3 of you. Apparently, the rest of you want to negotiate. What about 10%? If they were within 10% of each other, would you say they maybe might appear to work? I mean, yeah, maybe. Well, that's not everybody yet, so I guess the rest of you want to negotiate. What about 15%? Would you settle for 15? Definitely? Okay. And apparently some of you wouldn't. Well, of course, the problem I'm trying to point out, which you've already figured out, is this. There are major contradictions between two different methods used on the same rock. Now, we've got an hour each on 14 and potassium-argon in the back. I'm only going to show you 3 examples just to prove the point. This is Sunset National Monument in Arizona. If you ever go to the Grand Canyon, this is south of the east end of the Grand Canyon. It is really worth pulling in there just to take a look. This is a relatively small volcano, but the embers up here, these colors at the top, well, at sunset it just glows, and therefore that's why it's called Sunset Crater. But this is an area where Indians lived, well, hundreds and thousands of years ago. With that in mind, we know that this volcano erupted approximately 900 years ago. 900 years is not very difficult to figure out. But in addition to that, in the cinder cones, in the lava flows from this eruption, we have actually found native Indian artifacts. So we know they were there, right? Now, when you attempt to date using radiometric dating processes, volcanic materials, you use what is called the Potassium-Argon Method. That's the only one that supposedly works with volcanic materials. So we took some samples, sent them away to a lab, paid them for the test, but we didn't tell them where they came from. And they came back and told us that this material we know to be roughly 900 years old was in fact 210 to 230,000 years old. I think that's more than 15% different. How about you? Number 2, this is a piece of volcanic rock from Australia, but inside this piece of volcanic rock, we have a piece of wood, and the heat of the volcanic rock has turned the wood to charcoal. So this is volcanic rock with charcoal inside, correct? There's no possibility of contamination because the wood was completely surrounded by the volcanic material. But the heat of the lava cooked the wood into charcoal. So since this is carbon, we can use carbon-14 to test this. This is volcanic rocks. We use potassium-argon to date this correctly. Now, I do not agree with these dates. I want you to clearly understand that. I believe the Earth, universe are 6,000 years old. But we took samples, sent them away to a laboratory, paid them to test the samples, give us a result, did not tell them where the samples came from. I don't agree, but the lab that did the carbon-14 date on the charcoal came back with a date of 45,000 years old. Now, I don't agree with it, but that's what they got. But the lab on dating, the lab that did the potassium-argon dating came back with a date of 44 million. I don't know about you, I think that's more than 15%. Third last example to prove my point. This comes from 1801, the Big Island of Hawaii. Now, the volcanoes of Hawaii are not known for massive explosions like Mount St. Helens. The volcanoes of Hawaii are known for the massive amounts of lava pouring out of them, because the Hawaiian volcanoes just pour massive amounts of lava. So in 1801, there was an eruption, and there were people there to witness and document the eruption in 1801, right? Now, take a look. This is a diagram showing underwater volcanoes, and here's a volcano sticking out of the water, and this is going to represent our Hawaiian island, okay? There are many. There are thousands and thousands of underwater volcanoes. But I'm not a proud person. I just want you to know that. But I do hope you will appreciate the effort it takes to make some of these slides for you, that's all. So watch carefully here. In 1801, there was an eruption. Apparently you missed it. The correct response was, ah. Okay, so in 1801, there was an eruption. Ah, much better. In this case, the lava flowed out of the top of the volcano, down the side of the volcano, into the Pacific Ocean, went all the way down the side of the volcano to the ocean floor, 2.6 miles down. A few years ago, we got a bright idea. Let's send a robot down that flow, because you can trace it all the way down, and we'll take some samples using potassium-argon, see what we get. So we sent the robot down 0.8 of a mile, 1.3 kilometers, took a sample, came back and got a date of 0 million years old. No, technically that's correct. Technically that's correct. Carbon-14 decays very, very quickly, but potassium-argon is very, very slowly. You see, carbon-14 decays very quickly. As a matter of fact, if anybody ever tells you they have dated dinosaur fossil bones using carbon-14, I want you to look them right straight in the eye and laugh hysterically. Come on, practice. You see, we can't even measure carbon-14 levels beyond 103,000 supposed years. Again, I don't think it's been around that long, but you can't even measure it beyond 103,000. It's no good on millions. It's supposedly only good on hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, but it's no good on millions. But potassium-argon is exactly the opposite. It breaks down very, very slowly, and it is no good on hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, good on millions, right? So if this material is only 217 years old, 0 million is correct. So technically, it's correct, right? We said, okay, let's send the robot down. We sent it down 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers, dated the material at 12 million years old. Excuse me? For material we know is 217. Well, we said, that's interesting. Let's send the robot all the way down 2.6 miles. We took a sample, got a date of 21 million years old. For material that we know is 217, is that right? Yeah. Do you see these things simply don't work? Any knowledgeable evolutionist doesn't even bother to use them because they know they don't work. Well, continuing, this is coal. Now, this is pure anthracite coal. Anthracite is the hardest, densest, bestest coal there is. Anthracite's the really good stuff. Hello? Now, anybody who knows anything about coal formation will tell you, you only find coal, oil, natural gas between layers of sedimentary rock. Did you hear that? You only find natural coal, natural oil, natural gas between layers of sedimentary rock, which means you only find coal, oil, gas between layers of dried out mud, correct? Look at this photo. This comes from Upper Michigan State, but here you see layers, is that correct? Here you see layers, and then there's the coal in between. And anybody who knows anything about coal formation will tell you it takes 10 feet of dead plant and wood material, all in one place, all at one time, without decay, compressed down to 1 foot, to get anthracite coal. So you got to compress 10 to 1 to get anthracite. If you compress it only 2, maybe 3 to 1, you get brown lignites. You compress it 5 or 6 to 1, you're going to get bituminous, medium-grade coal. But you got to compress it 10 to 1 to get anthracite. Hello? Here is the problem. The problem is that in the states of Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado, we have pure layers of anthracite coal 200 feet and 300 feet thick. That means, well, we have so much coal we don't know what to do with it. We haven't even started the bottom layer yet. We're still working on the top layer. But the fact of the matter is, in order to have 200 or 300 feet of anthracite coal, you would have to have 2,000 foot thick layer, 3,000 foot of dead plant and wood material all at one place, all at one time, to get anthracite coal 200 and 300 foot thick. Now, that means you'd have to have those layers of dead plant and wood material, 2,000, 3,000 foot thick, all in one place, all at one time, without decay, and enough mud on top to compress it down. Hello? I would suggest to you that only a worldwide flood could do that. How about you? And you find the darndest things in coal. Hello? You find the darndest things in coal. We did the dinosaur presentation. I showed you a small black iron pot. I showed you a Spoonosaurus. Is that correct? They were found in coal. And you find the darndest things in coal. Now, in this presentation, I just want to show you one more. You see, you find the darndest things in coal. How about this little bell? This bell was found in 1944, medium-grade bituminous coal in the state of West Virginia, but according to evolutionists, the coal is more than 300 million years old. Anybody got a problem with that? When you turn the bell over and look inside, the clapper is made out of iron, but the bell itself is made out of a very unique material. Now, the projector upstairs apparently was not turned off, and it's in the process of turning down, so we really needed to turn it off to save the light bulb, what's left of it, but that's why you see that cast up there. But, yeah, this is coming from yours. But here, this bell is made of a very unique alloy. An alloy so unique it's not used today in manufacture, but apparently somebody knew how to do it. Is that correct? And then, of course, there you go. Well, somehow or another, it turns off the electricity. And my projector turned off, but we'll turn it back on. It'll come back. So, as long as yours is off, mine will come back on. I'm not worried about it. But the alloy is most unique. It's not used today, and the clapper is made out of iron, correct? Now, I would like you to look at the little bell here very, very closely. If something is a fact, I will simply say it. If something is my opinion, I will always say it's my opinion, okay? Fair? What is the fact about this bell? It was made between creation and the flood by a human being. It was trapped in vegetable materials from the flood that turned into coal. That's a fact. Hello? But here is my speculation. You see, the bell, you'll start to see here, but the top of the bell I have blown up right here. So this is what the top of the bell looks like right here. Now, in my opinion, when I take a look at the top of the bell, I think it was used in pagan worship before the flood. Now, that is only my opinion. I cannot prove it. I'm not trying to convince you. You make up your own decision, okay? However, when I speculate, it's usually based on really good information. You see, I think this was used in pagan worship before the flood because recent archaeological diggings in India and at Babylon have found bells of very similar size and shape. Hello? So I think I'm on good ground, but I'm not trying to convince you. And let's talk about fossils. When I was in school, they taught me it takes millions and millions of years to get a dinosaur fossil. That's what they taught you, is that correct? But again, I don't believe that anymore. Now, if you were here for the dinosaur presentation, I showed you my first and second most favorite fossil. Do you remember what they were? See how quickly they forget. Come on, my two species of Hatosaurus, the Fedorosaurus and the Bolosaurus, right? Right. But I said if you would come for this session, I would show you my third all-time most favorite fossil. So I would now like to introduce you to a picture showing a fossil, my third most favorite fossil. This is a fossil, Teddybearosaurus. Now this fossil, Teddybearosaurus, fossilized in only 4 months. Is fossilization a rapid or a slow process? It's a rapid process. Would you like to see where it fossilized? That's 2 of you. How about the rest of you? Yes. Oh, okay. Let me show you where it was fossilized. This is called the dripping or dropping well on the River Nid in Yorkshire, England. That's the farthest northeast corner of England. Up above, and the mineral water flows over the edge slowly and gradually. The water evaporates, leaving this stone waterfall you see here. As the water evaporates, it leaves the rock. The color you see here is algae growing in the water. What they've done is they put hooks along the bottom here and a wire, and people come along and put things there, come back 4 months later and collect them fossilized. Now, let's take a look at how many teddy bears are being fossilized at the time that this particular photograph was taken, okay? So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 teddy bears. There are 23 teddy bears in the process of being fossilized. Hello? In addition to which, we have a bell, a woman's purse, a teapot, a hat, another hat, a kielbasa, and a bell. But there's one more item that if you could explain it to me, I would really appreciate knowing, because I have never figured this one out. A plastic lobster. Now, why would you want to fossilize a plastic lobster? Isn't he stiff enough already? Now, that's interesting, but let's show you some more. This is a man-made coil of rope. Some of you might be able to read it. It's from the Czech Republic, it says so right there. But this man-made coil of rope fossilized in only 2 weeks. Now, here we are, Finger Lakes area, Onondaga, etc. Do we have any fisher people in here? Any men, any women who like to fish? 1, 2, 3. Anybody else? 4. We have 4. Okay. I'm sorry, 5. Thank you. Oh, no? I thought you... No? Oh, okay. We have at least 4 people in here that are fisher people. After all, we don't want to be sexist about this. Now, you 4 are going to be my expert witnesses, okay? Sir? Sir? If you're going to be an expert witness, you have to pay attention now. Please tell me something. In this picture, that's a fossil fish, correct? Agreed? Come on, my experts agree. That's a fossil fish, right? Now, I want to show you a statement by an evolutionary believing paleontologist who found this fish. He said, and I want to compliment this particular evolutionary paleontologist because he didn't allow his religion to get in the way of a good, valid scientific observation, all right? I think when an evolutionist is simply honest, we need to applaud them, and I'm sincere about that. I really am. But this evolutionary paleontologist who found this fish looked at the evidence, did not allow his religion to get in the way of a good scientific observation, and said that based on the condition of this fossil fish, it had fossilized in less than 5 hours. I mentioned to some of you, I just came back from Brazil 6 weeks ago. It was my 14th mission trip to Brazil. This comes from Brazil. It's called the Santana Formation. At the Santana Formation, we have found fossil gills, fossil muscles, fossil stomachs. What the evolutionist wrote in his report was, and I quote, "What is clear is that the fossilization process took place moments after the fish died and was completed within only a few, probably less than 5 hours," unquote. But this evolutionist went on to write, in this case, quote, "Instantaneous fossilization," unquote, "is suspected to have been the very cause of death." Now, please tell me, if you can die from it, is fossilization a rapid or a slow process? Yeah, if you can die from it, it's rapid. Is that right? Yeah. So fossilization is not a slow process. And if you come to understand what occurs during the fossilization process, you would come to realize it has to be fast. It cannot possibly be slow. Well, we're going to move on to a couple more things. Now, how many of you have noticed that the moon is moving away from the Earth? How many of you noticed the moon is moving away from? You haven't noticed? You hadn't noticed? Where are your powers of observation? It's amazing. The moon is moving away at a staggeringly fast rate. Are you ready to be staggered? You are not convincing. Are you ready to be staggered? Yes. Well, the moon is moving away at a staggeringly fast rate. The moon is moving away at 1.5 inches a year. Come on, aren't you staggered? And you hadn't noticed. Yeah, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is science. We can literally measure the moon is moving away from the Earth at 1.5 inches a year. Now let's think about this for just a second. If the Earth and the moon are only 6,000 years old, as the Bible tells us, that means that the moon has only moved 9,000 inches away from the Earth since it was created. That is only 750 feet, and 750 feet is not much in 239,000 miles. Is that correct? But you do not have to believe me. I challenge you. You don't have to believe me. You can prove this for yourself. All you have to have is a laptop computer. I'm not sure you couldn't do it with a good pad, as a matter of fact, but you can prove this for yourself. Take the formula for the law of gravity. If you don't have it, I will give it to you. You plug in the mass of the Earth, the mass of the moon, the distance of 239,000 miles, hit enter and go back in time and see what happens. Now, you all know that as two objects get closer to each other, the force of gravity goes up, correct? It's an inverse square law. If you half the distance, you quadruple the force. Today, the force of gravity that holds the moon in orbit around the Earth is equal to 22 quadrillion tons of force. 22 quadrillion tons of force hold the moon in orbit around the Earth. So let's think. It's moving away at 1.5 inches now, right? So if I put those things in the computer, hit enter and go back in time, if I go back 1 year, it's 1.5 inches closer. I go back another year, it's another 1.5 inches closer, correct? But you do that for a few thousand years, and what happens? It starts to come back at a foot a year. Later, it will start to come back at a mile a year, right? You put this in a laptop computer, hit enter, go back in time, the moon would come back and hit the Earth 1.4 billion supposed years ago. Now, evolutionists say the Earth is 4.5 to 5 billion. They say the Earth is the same age as the moon, which would mean that according to evolutionists, the moon was attached to the Earth for the first 3.6 billion years, correct? And then it started moving away, and it's been moving away for the last 1.4 billion years, right? A little louder, everybody? Not a chance. If you know anything about gravity, you would know that if the moon was ever here, it would still be here, correct? And there's another problem. There's something called the Roche distance, R-O-C-H-E, Roche distance. It's 11,500 miles. If the moon had ever been that close to the Earth, the force of gravity would be so high, the moon would literally be torn into shreds and we would have a ring and not a moon. Hello? If the moon were as old as evolutionists claim, today it would be 355,000 miles away, not 239, and the rotation of the Earth would slow down to 55 days a year, which it obviously ain't. Hello? There are 10 scientific reasons to prove the moon is in fact young. We found radioactive elements on the moon that could not possibly be there if the moon was old, and the list goes on. This is called the moon recession problem, the recession rate of the moon coming back towards the Earth. But of course, again, what is the primary physical impact of the moon upon the Earth? Tides. See, this is the problem of teaching in New York upstate. You're so far from the water you forgot about the tides. But it's tides, right? Let's think about this. When you've got 22 quadrillion tons of gravitational force, you get tides, correct? Now, if the moon were to come back towards the Earth, what would happen? Well, the tides would start getting higher and higher, correct? You don't have to believe me. You can prove this for yourself. If you put that formula in the computer, hit return, go back in time, you only have to go back 500 million supposed years, and the tide would rise 1 mile high twice a day. Now, I don't remember, but how high is Syracuse above sea level? Not that far, yeah. By no means. It's several hundred feet above sea level, but I don't remember. I wasn't thinking it would be that high, but I would say probably 800, 1,000, but that's only a guess. That's just my best guess. But nonetheless, the tide would rise 1 mile high twice a day, correct? So I guess that begs the question, do you know how to breathe underwater? Hello? And how fast would the continents erode with a tide that rises 1 mile high twice a day? Hello? Now, we're going to talk about the problem of starlight and time. We'll end here. There is more on the DVD. I have 2 complete DVDs just on strong arguments for the young Earth, young universe. For example, we didn't even talk tonight about the single strongest argument for a young Earth, which is the decay of the Earth's magnetic field. It proves absolutely and positively the Earth isn't more than 6,000 years old. It is an irrefutable argument, but it's only one of 350 arguments that we have today. If you go to my website, I have 150 little DVDs that are only 1, 2, 3 minutes long. Each one has a scientific argument proving that evolutionary time is not true. And that's only 150 out of 350. I'm working on getting the others, but I got to go to England to do it, and that's the problem. Now, if any of you'd like to fund a missionary, let me know. But I want to talk about the starlight and time problem. Now, evolutionists will tell you, since we can see an object that is 13.82 billion light years away, it must be 13.82 billion years old. Is that correct? That is, well, that's their argument. Yeah. And so I want you to think about something. In order for you to understand what I'm about to share with you, it's not that technical, but just in order for you to understand what I'm about to say, you have to get over one hurdle. The one hurdle you have to get over is this. A light year is not a time. A light year is a distance. It's not a time. It's a distance. It's the distance that light travels at the current speed of light as measured on Earth today in 1 year. It's approximately 5.8 trillion miles. However, you and I were taught about the speed of light. They taught you it's 300,000 kilometers a second or 186,000 miles a second. Is that correct? But remember, we have never measured the speed of light outside of our solar system. We've never been outside of our solar system, and you cannot remotely measure the speed of light outside. You can only measure it here in this place. So first of all, we've never measured it out there, so you don't know how fast it is out there. Is that correct? Yeah. But they told you it was a constant. But the fact of the matter is, in our day-to-day life, as we are going along day to day, for us on Earth, it's effectively a constant. That's true. However, it is not a constant. The fact of the matter is, the speed of light has been slowing down since it was created. We know this. First of all, the astronomer Romer in 1676 measured the speed of light with a fairly good accuracy, and we have been able to measure it slowing down ever since. Number two, if you know anything about physics and science, you know about the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics says that everything is in a state of decay. So please tell me, if everything in the universe is in a state of decay, why would light be exempt? Hello? It shouldn't be. And all the citations you see here, all those citations are just citations from article on my website you can read for free. On my website, I have an article listing all the research done. We have accelerated light beyond the speed of light. We have decelerated light. We have decelerated light to a speed you could watch it go down the road in front of the church. Hello? One group of evolutionary astronomers and astrophysicists say that on 2 different occasions, the most recent, 2009, they say they stopped light and started it again. Now, they say they stopped it for 1.5 seconds and then started it again. Now, first of all, you have never heard that, I'm sure. Number two, I disagree with the use of the word stop. I've read the paper. I'm only quoting what they say. But to me, it is irrelevant whether they stopped it or not. Now, first of all, if you can stop light for 1.5 seconds and then start it again, you have really accomplished something quite remarkable. You have to understand that in 1.5 seconds, light would go around the equator of the Earth 10 times. Hello? So if you can stop it for 1.5 seconds, you've really done something scientifically marvelous. Hello? But I don't care whether they stopped it or not. Think with me. We've accelerated it, we've decelerated it. If you can manipulate it, it's not a constant, right? And we have measured it since 1676. That's 100 years before the American Revolution, right? And we've been able to measure it slowing down ever since then. Now, I would also like to introduce you to a Russian radio astronomer. His name is Dr. Vladimir Sergeyevich Trotsky. He lives in Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, which is my center of operation in Russia. He's not a creationist, but based on really good research, solid data, he says that in his opinion, light at one time was traveling 10 million times faster than today. Do the math. If light were traveling 10 million times faster than today initially, it would cross the entire universe in only a few thousand years. In my book, I have 8 ways that you can see what we see and only be 6,000 years old. It's using good science. It's not fiction, it's not faith, it's not speculation, it's good science. And so I want you to think about this. We have good evidence to show that the speed of light has been slowing down. Now, with that in mind, it means that it would cross the entire universe much, much faster in only a matter of thousands of years. Now, there are many, many other things that prove the Earth and the universe are, in fact, young. Too much salt in the oceans. The moon, well, the moon is still hot on the inside, but it should be stone cold. The Earth is still flaming hot inside, but it should be stone cold if it was as old as evolutionists claim. We have too much dust in the solar system. We have lumpy rings around planets. We have barred spiral galaxies. There's not enough SN1A supernovas. The fact of the matter is, everywhere you look, whether it's in the Earth, on the Earth, near the Earth, in the solar system, in the galaxy, in the universe, we have today 350 plus arguments it's all young. But evolutionists do not even have one proof it's old. They just claim it. Do you know what one of the 5 arguments they have for the Earth and the universe being old? This is what they say. Well, it just looks old, doesn't it? Well, Hollywood makeup will do that too. Hello? So, we're going to take a break. We're about now back on time. This is 5:40. Again, I'll be back at the book table. I guess we're going to have snacks, but we're going to set up and we're going to do the Origin of the Races presentation next, okay? And I'm sure that you'll want to be here for that. So let's take a 20-minute break, all right?
Let's try to be organized.
Yeah, sure.